Ideas Inspired Information Podcast powered by Loke Enterprise. Here's your host, Braxton Holly.
Welcome to another edition of Ideas Inspired Information Podcast. I'm your host, Braxton Holly, and I got a good one for you today. Today, actually, I'm going to talk about action. I'm going to break down action and what it really is. I want everybody to be able to go out, do their own thing, make their own action, be able to stand on your 2 feet and not have to worry about anybody or anything else. So, check this out. ACTION, action. What does action really mean to you? I'm going to break down what action really means to me. Action has its own parts and its own variables. So, if we start at the top, we start with A. The A means actual to me. What is actual? What is actually going to happen? What are you actually going to do? So, if you sit down and you think to yourself, all right, what action steps do I need to make my dreams an actual reality, to make my aspirations actual? What do I need to do? So if you actually plan, brainstorm, put things together that you need to do in order to make that action happen, you can do it. By no means can you be stopped by anybody but yourself. The only thing that stops anybody is themselves. So, if you allow yourself to be stopped, therefore you didn't actually take action to do what you really wanted to do. Now, we got to C. AC, consistency. 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 Consistency is the key to change. If you really want to make a change, you got to be consistent. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be consistent at what you're doing. Consistent at what you're doing. Consistent at what you're doing. Listen, if you really want to be able to move on to that next step, to go out and do something you really want to do, to be able to make a way that you hadn't been able to make, you got to be consistent at it. Hey, yeah, I want a 6-pack. Well, I can only do abs twice a week. No, you never get a 6-pack. Hey, I want to be able to run 3 miles in 15 minutes, but I only go out and run twice a week. I'm never going to get to that because I wasn't consistent enough to do it. Be consistent at something means you're doing it every day. You're thinking about it. You want to do it all the time. That's all you want to do. That's how you become consistent. You eat, you sleep it, you think about it. Everything that you're doing is revolved around it. That's how you become consistent at what you're trying to do. Oh, yeah, T-A-C-T. Huh. Sounds like something we used to take after high school to go to college. But A-C-T. The T, for me, that stands for tough. Things become tough. In order to make something new happen, in order to have consistency, in order to make that change, it has to get tough at some point. At some point, it's going to get tough. And that's when you really understand it's what you're doing, what you really want to do. When you start going through the times that aren't fun, when you're doing stuff that you don't want and you don't like doing, yeah, it's tough now. Now, are you going to really, is your dream something that you really want to do, or is your dream something that you just fantasize, something you just had in your mind? All you thought about was the good times, the good, what I can get out of this. But it's a process. You got to go through the process. You got to go through the ups, the downs, the tough times in order to make that action happen. Identify. I for identify. What are you making an action toward? Identify what you're making an action toward. Don't just go out and try to create an action and not know what your target is. You need to have a target. You need to have a market. You need to know where you're going, what you're doing, how you're going to do it. So you need to identify what it is you're trying to do. You want to actually know what it is you're trying to do. You want to consistently do what you're trying to do. You want to go through the tough times doing what you need to do. Because now you've identified it. Now those tough times aren't going to be so hard because you know what you're trying to do. You've identified what you're trying to do. So those tough times, they're going to be a breeze over your shoulder. You can say, hey, that's a little heavy. Get up off me. Because I know where I'm going. I know what I'm trying to do. So identify that action. O, optimize. Optimize your time. Optimize your ability. Optimize what it is you're trying to do. Think about that. If I sit here and ramble on and not knowing what I want to say or what I want to tell you or what action means, I've wasted the time. I haven't optimized the time. So I wrote it down. I created notes for it. I broke it down to what each letter means to me, and then how each word from that letter makes a new meaning, and how action becomes a whole and not parts. So I optimize the word. So optimize your time. If that means you waking up in the morning at 4 o'clock to get a workout in, to read a book, to study some material, whatever it is that you need to do, optimize that time. Make sure you're using every ounce of time you can each day, because you only have 24 hours a day. You'll never have more time. You'll never have less. 24 hours a day, same as your neighbor, same as your neighbor's neighbor. So optimize your time. And the end for me is necessity. What is the necessity? Yeah, I know what my action can produce. But am I doing the things needed to create that production? Am I making the actions to create that production? What else do I need to do for those actions to happen? What else can I do for that action to happen? Yes, necessity, your needs. If you have to do something, if it's life or death, you know you have to do it. Well, is that dream life or death to you? Are you okay with 40 years from now saying, I wish I had. I regret I didn't. Are you okay with that? And if you can tell yourself you're okay with that now, don't worry about making that action to do what you thought you wanted to do. But if you can't say you're okay with saying that, if you want to be better than you are now, be in a better position than you think you are in now, make an action. Do the things you need to do. So if you do the things you need to do, you optimize your time, you identify what it is you're trying to do, you go through those tough times, you stay consistent, and actually make effort, no telling where you could go. They say the sky's the limit, but you might be in the universe. No telling what you can do when you go out and make action. Let me give you a story. Actually, the story is how this podcast actually started. I was talking with some people, and we were going to start a podcast together. And with all our schedules kind of all over the place, that ended up not happening. But I knew that I wanted to start a podcast. I knew that I wanted to be able to video my podcast, to be able to put things that I feel within inside of me into the air, into the world, so people can hear it. Maybe my story, maybe what I have to say can help someone. But my problem is I don't like listening to my voice on the mic. I don't like the way I sound recorded. I don't like the way I look on the camera. I don't like the facial gestures that I make. I'm critical of myself, but I knew that I wanted to start a podcast. So what did I do? I actually started researching. I started listening to some more podcasts. I started understanding things you need to have, things you have to do to have a quality podcast. And me, I don't want to put anything out if it's not up to a quality standard. It might not be the very best, but that's a learning process. That's an improvement process. That's a learning and improvement process. So if I've done the best I can right now, then I know I'll get better as I continue to go. Because you get better by trial and error, by failure and success. That's how you get better. So I knew me starting a podcast would make me more comfortable on the mic, would make me more comfortable in front of the camera. I spent a lot of time behind the scenes. I try to make a lot of things happen behind the scenes. Take pictures, I shoot videos, I DJ. I'm the one DJ that may say little to nothing on the mic. If I'm asked to say it, that might be the only time I say it. But now that I have a podcast, I'm becoming more comfortable on the mic. I'm becoming more comfortable in front of the camera. I'm becoming more comfortable because now I'm trialing and I'm erroring. I'm failing and I'm succeeding. I'm getting better at it. So I made the action to start this podcast. So now that I started this podcast, I have to be consistent at it. I have to continue to put out quality content. I have to continue to do the things that is necessary for me to have a good podcast for people to listen to. Because if you don't want to hear something I have to say, you're not going to come back and listen again. If what I'm saying is it's all broken up and chopped up, you're not going to want to hear what I have to say because it's going to be all over the place. It's going to be like a casserole, a bunch of stuff just mixed up together. So I took my time and I made the necessary steps. So for this podcast, I started off with my action. First, I actually went and I said, all right, I want to start a podcast and I want to do this, this, and this. So I actually started making stuff happen. But then I consistently listened to podcasts. Then I went through the tough part of purchasing things that I may or may not have had the funds for at that time. Then I identified the audience I wanted to speak to. Then I optimized what I wanted to talk about and broke it down into segments. And then I'm doing the necessary steps to make the podcast happen. So I want to be able to grow the podcast each and every day. But I got to be consistent at it. I have to research. I have to know what I'm talking about in order for you to continue to come back and listen to it. So I want you to be able to make your own action. I challenge you right now. At this waking moment to write down, make a note, use your phone, and put down what that action that you want to happen in your life. What is that action? Write that down. Jot that down. Now, break that word action back down. Break it down as you want to break it down. The way I broke it down was actually, consistency, tough, identify, optimize, and necessity. So what actually do you need to do for that action you want to happen? Jot that down. What do you have to do to be consistent at that on a daily basis? Jot that down. What things can arise that will be tough for you to go through? Jot that down. Identify what you want to do with it, who you want to put it to. Jot that down. Optimize your time on what you are doing and the best way to do it. Jot that down. And last but certainly not least, what do you need to make happen? What are the necessities? How can you make this action a reality? Ladies and gentlemen, this is another edition of Ideas Inspired Information Podcast. I'm your host, Braxton Holly, and go out and take action.